You fall through the crack between worlds and find a curious leather-bound book and open it, finding through it the door to another realm and the beginning of a journey to wondrous worlds of mystery and magic, and a tale of family, legacies, betrayal, regret, and puzzles so hard they might just fry your brain. So, sit back, crack open that book, and let me tell you everything you need to know about Myst. The Myst series is the work of Cyan Worlds, and the creation of the brothers Rand and Robin Miller. When they first set out to create video games, they first focused on puzzle adventures for children, such as The Manhole, Cosmic Osmo, and Spelunks. These games were black and white, first-person point-and-click adventure games, focusing primarily on puzzles and minigames and without any story elements. Wanting to explore this missing aspect, the Millers decided their next game would be aimed at adults. Not only that, but they wanted a game to feature ethical choices and a non-linear story. They approached Activision with a pitch for their game, titled The Grey Summons, but were rejected and told, and I quote, "Stick to making children's games." This was a heavy blow, as at the time they were doing very poorly and faced the end of their game developing careers. Fortunately, Sunsoft, who were fans of The Manhole, contacted them with the desire to fund a game aimed at an adult audience, which was very much in line with the Millers' goals. So, development on Myst began in 1991, with a small team of about 5 people, not counting Rand and Robin. Myst drew inspiration from classic text game Zork, the mythical universe of Star Wars, the concept of traversing different worlds as seen in the Chronicles of Narnia, and the works of Jules Verne. In fact, the name Myst is inspired by Verne's novel The Mysterious Island. Not only that, but the setting of the game itself and the atmosphere were drawn from the same work. A particular influence on the story was Robin Miller's unfinished novel Dunny Hut, from which the Dunny civilization seen across the series draws its name. In terms of gameplay, the Millers decided that all puzzles had to be something functional, something that would feel not just familiar, but part of the world and the story. In other words, they couldn't be puzzles for the sake of puzzling, but something equivalent to dealing with a circuit breaker at home. Their guiding principle was, once the players find the clues and figure out the puzzle, if they're angry with the developers, then it's Cyan's fault for designing a bad puzzle. If instead the players were angry at themselves for not figuring it out, then they'd done a good job. Cyan gave Sunsoft their game proposal, which consisted mostly of hand-drawn maps of the different locales, and asked for what they thought would be double the cost of making the game, though ultimately Myst would cost a whole lot more. Seeing their pitch, Sunsoft merely asked, would the game be better than the upcoming 7th Guest, of which a demo was making the rounds? The Millers confidently said yes, and I think they were absolutely right. Cyan faced numerous technical hurdles in the development of Myst, primarily with dealing with the limitations around CD-ROM and the 6 speeds on most people's drives. This was early on in the lifetime of CD drives, when single-speed drives were the norm. So Cyan did everything they could to compress the living daylights out of everything, pre-render animations and scenes, and organize the data in the CD along its spiral, so that related media was stored adjacent to one another. Originally, Myst only had sound effects, as the Millers believed the music would break immersion, though they would ultimately realize that not only was this not the case, but that music could be used to enhance certain moments. Robin Miller composed over 40 tracks for the Myst soundtrack. Myst released in 1993 to tremendous success. At the time of release, Rand Miller believed that selling 100,000 copies would be mind-blowing. 7 months later, they doubled that amount. By 1994, it reached over 500,000 copies, and by 1995, they cracked the million. This was a brand new release by a relatively unknown developer. It was a massive success. And with that success, development began on the next game in the series, titled Riven, the sequel to Myst. It was a bigger game, with a bigger team and a budget nearly 10 times as that of its predecessor. Unlike Myst, which, due to technical constraints, had to limit the real actor full-motion video sequences to only the characters' faces as seen in the linking books, Riven has full cutscenes shot in front of blue screens for a more cinematic experience. Riven released in 1997 to extraordinary success, but it would mark the last time Robin Miller worked on the Myst series, leaving Cyan Worlds to pursue other projects shortly after the game's release. Rand Miller himself decided they were done developing games in the Myst franchise, but their publisher, Mattel, wanted a third game, so they shopped for new developers, landing on journeyman project developers Presto Entertainment to create Myst 3: Exile, which featured actor Brad Dourif of Chucky fame as the main antagonist. Then it gets a bit complicated. Cyan released Uru: Ages Beyond Myst in 2003, a third-person adventure game with platforming elements that tied into the mythos of the Myst series but had elements of real-world history, part of it set in New Mexico. It was intended to release with an MMO component, but that didn't materialize until many years after the game's release. It has a cult following, but was not very successful and put a tremendous strain on the company. Myst 4 Revelation, released in 2004, developed in-house by Ubisoft, who were given free rein to add their own ideas to the Myst mythos as long as they followed the ground rules that Cyan set down as creators of the franchise, despite not wanting to do any more Myst sequels, with Uru being more of a spin-off, focusing on the Dunny civilization rather than the stories told in the mainline Myst games. Cyan returned to their franchise for the final release in the series, with the aptly named Myst 5: End of Ages, which, much like Uru, used 3D graphics rendered in-engine in real time and allowing for free exploration, a departure from the point-and-click through scenes approach of the series up till then. Myst 5 released in 2005 to a favorable reception, though shortly after Cyan announced the end of their development work and laid off most of its staff, though in a rare move for the games industry and with backing secured for a new non-Myst project, they managed to hire everyone back. Cyan would eventually release a spiritual successor to the Myst series, Abduction, in 2016, then a remake for Myst in 2021, which itself is a remake of a 2014 remake of Myst, called Real Myst. Then Firmament, a new IP, in 2023, and a remake for the second game in the Myst series, Riven, in 2024. The Myst games deal primarily with the members of the Dunny civilization, people who possess the art, the ability to write descriptive books and create worlds from their words, literally. Not only that, but they can also create linking books, through which they may travel to those worlds known as Ages. A key figure among them is Atris, one of the last surviving members of the Dunny and whose family is at the core of the Myst games. The protagonist of Myst, Riven, Exile, and Revelation is simply called the Stranger, someone who found the Myst linking book and set forth on an adventure that brought them into contact with Atris and the worlds of the Dunny. The Stranger is meant to represent the player, putting them in the protagonist's role. For Myst 5, on the other hand, the player is an unknown individual who receives a letter from Atris asking for help. Myst is the first of the Stranger's adventures. Opening the linking book and touching the title page's portal, he finds himself transported to the eponymous Silent Age Myst, encountering multiple contraptions and mysteries. Upon entering the library, he finds two curious books, one blue and another red, each missing various pages. In these books, he finds two young men trapped, and they beg for his help in escaping. But can they really be trusted? With the pages spread across different ages, the Stranger must find them and decide for himself if they should be set free. In Riven, the Stranger's friend Atris asks him to head into the eponymous age, which is damaged and soon to collapse. His wife, Catherine, is trapped there, held by his father Gen, the tyrannical, self-appointed ruler of Riven. The stranger's task is twofold: help Catherine escape and end his father's rule, trapping him where he may not hurt anyone ever again. In Myst 3 Exile, Atreus has finished a new book for a new age to give the members of the nearly extinct Dunny a new home. But before he can put his plans in motion, a ghost from his past returns and steals the book, aiming to lure Atreus into a trap, to make him pay for past mistakes and transgressions. While the one to make the journey is the stranger, the player, to recover the book and ensure the Dunny have the chance they deserve. Myst 4 Revelation has the stranger arriving to Atreus' home age, invited to help with making a difficult decision, as the player is the only person they trust to be objective and impartial. The matter hitting very close to home to Atreus, his wife, and their young daughter, Yisha. But before they can discuss things further, the age is struck by a terrible earthquake and Yisha disappears, with signs that someone may be after her. So it's the stranger's job to once more get involved in Atreus' family matters to save a young life. Uru takes the player to the Cleft, a deep cavern inside a dormant volcano in the deserts of New Mexico, and one of the original settlements of the Dunny, whose civilization has recently been uncovered and efforts have been made in their restoration. Upon arrival, the player finds a message from an older Yisha, who bids the character follow the trail of the Dunny and learn the dark truths in their history. Myst 5 End of Ages takes place after the events of Uru, when the player receives a letter from Atreus, who thinks his daughter may have gone off the deep end and bids their help. The player finds a strange tablet, which a seemingly deranged Yisha claims is the key to the restoration of the Dunny, but she can't use it. So she requests the player to explore different ages to unlock the powers of the tablet and ensure the survival of the Dunny. There's a reason Myst inspired a generation of adventure games and continues to do so. The puzzle design across the Myst series is superb, and not because they're complex. Some of them are complex, very much so. The Myst series has some of the hardest puzzles in gaming history. But what makes them special is that fundamental design principle the Millers set down during the creation of the first game, that puzzles be integrated with the story and the world. The puzzles are functional parts of the ages you visit. Completing them is meant to unlock something or progress your journey, even if it's something so simple as to open the way to a linking book. Across the Myst series, there aren't puzzles for the sake of puzzles. They're not just a challenge placed before you. In fact, the closest the Myst series gets to such a style of puzzling is with Myst 3, where you visit ages that are just filled with puzzles that must be completed before proceeding. But even then, the puzzles are tied inextricably to the story. There is a reason for these puzzle worlds, as they're meant to be teaching tools on the principles behind the art, the creation of worlds, and it's the main antagonist who has co-opted these places of learning to turn them against their creator, to punish him. The story of the Myst games is one you have to piece together yourself. There is a central narrative, but you also find many journals and witness memories of times gone by. And what I love about them is that these writings aren't just lore. It's not just background information, but context to the relationships and motivations of the different characters you encounter, and hints and clues as to how to solve some of those intricate puzzles. And with the majority of the games in the series having some form of ethical choice and multiple endings, these writings help inform the decision you have to make. But it's up to you to decide how much or how little you engage with these elements of the storytelling, especially as they're not delivered in a sequential manner, spread out as they are across the ages you can link to, and there being no specific order to how you should visit these worlds. But it's not just through text that stories are told, but through FMV cutscenes, some of them with some really good performances. Even Rand Miller, who plays Atreus across the series, despite many times stating he hated acting, delivers great performances. Top among them, of course, is Brett Dourif as Saavedro in Myst 3, embodying a deeply flawed but sympathetic villain. The Myst games, in their majority, might be first-person point-and-click adventure games where you navigate across still images of pre-rendered backgrounds. But that doesn't take away from how wondrous and breathtaking some of the ages are. Myst is tranquil but lonely. Amateria is a place covered in rails and meant to be a lesson in balance. Tomana is a beautiful oasis surrounded by blasted lands, and Riven is a strange mix of ancient temples, high-tech machinery, and lush forests. Every age is beautiful in its own unique way, and those I mentioned are but a handful of the many worlds you visit as part of your journey, each with their own theme, present in both the puzzle design and the leitmotifs of their musical compositions. For example, Riven is controlled by Gen, Atreus' father, so there is a bit of his music heard across the entire soundtrack, representing his dominion over the age. Now, this may not be important to some, but something that makes the experience of playing the Myst series special to me is that you can see in each title how the technology advanced, how much better the environments and animations look. It's a glimpse at the advancement of technology, something we cannot take for granted these days. But when you realize how much they accomplished with the limitations of the technology, you cannot help but gain a deeper appreciation for the hard work that goes into making these games. Something that is worth mentioning is that both Myst and Riven have received remakes from Cyan. And they don't just remake the game visually. It's not just a new coat of paint, but the entire experience has been overhauled. The Myst remake offers the standard puzzles, the same as they were in the original release and its myriad ports, but also a randomizer mode for those who've already bested Myst and want a new challenge. And Riven's remake completely overhauled the puzzles, as their original version wouldn't translate well to free roam. So even if you play through the original versions, which still hold up even today by the way, the remakes will offer new challenges and a refreshing experience. So in what order should you play these games? Where to begin? The answer is simple. Play the games in order: Myst, Riven, Exile, Revelation, and End of Ages. But hearing that, you may be wondering, what about Uru? The truth is, you can skip it. The plot of Uru and its themes are very much conveyed in Myst 5, where the gameplay is also consistent with the rest of the series. You can still play Uru if you want the full experience, but it is very much a departure from the style of gameplay of the other adventures. The Myst series is a masterclass of puzzle design and the integration of challenge and story in a cohesive manner that just serves to enhance the immersion of the player. If you've never experienced the Myst series, or you've played just one of them, then I urge you to go and get them all. First, most of them are on the cheap side, and second, it's an experience unlike any other. Even with the many Myst-like games out there, Cyan's work remains unique and marvelous, much like the ages themselves. So if you're ready, grab a good linking book and let it transport you to a whole new world.